this particular case, and with each particular case, there's always a theme, right? That I kind of tend to hone in on. And the thing with Daunte Wright's story is that all of this started about air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror. And I cannot, my brain won't compute why an air freshener calls for a traffic stop.
Yeah.
You know?
And now this young man is no longer alive on the earth. I can see it though when I look at things that have happened to me, you know, and I remember coming home from the zoo after being at the zoo with my husband and children, and my children were even younger. So my oldest was like 3, maybe 3.5. And then I had an infant, and, you know, we have like a cooler and things like that in the car, and we get pulled over feet from home, and I'm driving, and this officer is just on one from jump, and I could definitely see him getting to the point to where he was going to be so agitated. I could see him shooting me or something like that. He had me out of the car, just like barking at me the whole entire time, acting as if I was doing something. Right. And I'm like, look in the car, like I'm with my family, kept asking me if I had drugs and all this. When we let the windows down, as he demanded, and he did look in the back seat, instead of seeing a toddler and an infant, he's giving them the same look that he's giving us, and shining the light into the car with my children, has me out of the car, asking me still about drugs, asked me if I had weapons of mass destruction.
Because so can I just go?
Because I don't even know where would one get a weapon of mass destruction?
There? Like, can I go all the way in?
Riding around in the car?
Because that's not that is not a community servant.
No.
Which is what police are supposed to be. That is a person who has this idea of himself as a superhero, or as this, there's this thing, and I know that there are a lot of police officers who were former military, but there are also a lot of police officers who could not get into the military. And so they take those aggressions into their work every day.
He was so aggressive. He was, it's like if I would have coughed, it could have set him off. I mean, he was asking me things like, you know, do you have any weapons of mass destruction?
Where does that even come from?
Repeat it. And when I would repeat his outrageous questions, he would be like, it's a yes or no question. Just on one, like crazy. I could tell I'm dealing with a very volatile person. And even me, you know, as a 5 foot even mom, you know, with toddler and an infant in the car, you know, I could be treated that way. So,
and I'm just curious, Sierra, like, tell us the things that were running through your mind. So you have this police officer yelling at you about weapons of mass destruction from 2000 Saddam Hussein era. Yeah. So like what are the things that are coursing through your mind in that moment?
I was preparing myself for if he was going to like slam me down on the ground or something. He was acting violent to that point. Like anything I said out of my mouth, acting like he just couldn't take it. Like he was going to explode through his flesh. And it was crazy. And another officer came and was standing there, and they were doing the good cop, bad cop kind of thing. And I'm like, what is going on with this guy? Like, someone needs to do something. He's out of control. This is crazy. And he's like, I don't know, you know, everything's going to be fine and all this and that.
Is it?
Exactly. He ends up, after this whole ordeal went on for like half an hour, if not more. And, you know, mind you, we're only feet from the apartment complex entrance. And he eventually came back and told me that the tent on the car had an incorrect percentage. It wasn't legal, the tent. And I'm like, after all of that, and then he did some kind of whack tent test by putting his hand behind it. by this point, the sun was going down. You can't even see anything. This is so bogus and whack. You're not pulling me over because of this tent and then pulling me out, having me on the side of the road, asking me about weapons of mass destruction. I kept saying, you know, I want to get back in the car and check on my children and everything. And he would be, why? Why you want to get back over there so bad? Because I have an infant and a toddler in the car and they're crying.
And you're being a maniac.
Yeah. Yeah. He was absolutely a maniac. This same officer, because I live in an area where, you know, it's not where I want to be. And there's not a lot of us. And I have seen this same officer with Black and brown people pulled over many times. I see him and he has almost like this crazed look in his eye. It's like a thing he does. But when I say that to say, I can see, you know, the predicament that these young brothers are in because they do that to me. And, you know, here I am, but all they see is our skin anyway. And, you know, what I wanted to say about Oscar Toledo is I read that the family was not okay with the video being released yet. And then, you know, the law required the city to release the video footage within 60 days. The family got to see it. And I read that they had 2 days of notice with it, and they weren't okay with it being shared for whatever reasons. It doesn't matter.
Because it's psychological violence.
Yeah, and if there were 60 days, why did they have to do that right away? And my thing too is make it a part of something that is legally able to be requested in the Freedom of Information Act or something, not something that's broadcast across the news. And why does everyone have to see this boy's body crumple and fall to the ground?
Because as I follow Son of Baldwin, and he is an amazing writer, and he has this amazing ability to just get right to the center of what an issue is. And the other day he made a post that said, these videos and the constant loop that they're putting these videos on, that is a souvenir akin to back when they were lynching during the Jim Crow South. Wow. And they would all gather around and take their photos, and they would make postcards of the lynching scenes. They would make postcards of the mutilated bodies. And this might be getting a little bit too much, but the point being that that's what this is.
Yeah.
And so if a family has explicitly stated that they don't want the video, that is he was a boy.
Yeah.
A 7th grader. Now, this is a story that honestly I can't even go there.
Yeah.
And I was the same way about Tamir Rice.
Yeah, because it's children.
I couldn't dive into that story.
Right.
It just...
That was that one point for me, though, was just knowing that, you know, the people whose feelings matter in this, it's not the activists, it's not anybody, it's that family.
Thank you.
Who had to lose that little boy. And when I heard that they didn't want to, and there were 60 days, you know, within their policy, then why the immediate? You know what I mean? But like you said, it's that violence. It's violence that is committed against us in so many ways. And so what does that look like in our motherhood? What does that look like in our motherhood when, you know, certain situations have caused us to be in predicaments to where we have no choice but to go to work and take the children to daycare or to school. I get it. As a homeschooler, I get that everybody hasn't figured out a way that they could homeschool and stay home and do that. But I have to say, with that being my platform, that is one of the reasons why. That desire to protect my children from this is one of my reasons for homeschooling, because when we look at the violence perpetuated against Black and brown children, it happens so much in the classroom, and it doesn't happen with the fist. It happens with their words, with the way that they treat these children. And we have to look at it. We have to see it for what it is. And we can't just see it and be like, oh, well, wait until they do it to my child. They do that to my child, it's going to be a problem. It's a problem, period. The first time it ever happens, you know?
Exactly. And I want to just dig a little bit deeper under the surface, what it means when we say how it affects motherhood. So when we're talking about Oscar Toledo, when we're talking about Tamir Rice, when we're talking about Trayvon Martin, when we're talking about all and I'm speaking specifically in this moment of the young children who have been taken. So first, that's the immediate violation that this mother has to find out that the child that she whatever she went through to conceive this child, all the preparation that she took in preparing her body and nurturing her unborn child. When we talk about those first days and nights, how it is, you're bonding and you're so in love with your baby, but you're also exhausted. You're putting in that work and all the work that continues. So that's the first violation, is that this child is just immediately gone for there's no reason. Yeah. Right. It's not like there was an illness. Right. It's not like
just snatched.
And taken so traumatically and so violently. And to know that your child suffered and likely saw it, right? But then there's now what's happening. The constant loop playing, people using their child's name to make political points. Yeah. People using their child's name and image to sell an agenda, whatever the agenda is. And even with the activists, sometimes I wonder if they're being as careful, right? Yeah. And I know that they have work that they have to do, but how far? Yeah.
Yeah, because in past situations, I have seen interviews with families, and they are, they're out there in the streets pleading with the community, please not. And I think that is a fine line to have to tread when you're doing activist work, and not putting your own ego before the family's wishes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that child is still their child. Yeah. And so then they watch their child become commoditized for whoever and everyone else's benefit. Yeah. And they're still sitting at home entrenched in the pain and the sorrow and the anger and everything else. And then that's just mama dealing with herself. If there are other children,
father,
how is she able to show up for them?
Right.
How are those children showing up in their lives when they go to school?
Yeah. And, people have a right to grieve however they want to grieve. And people have a right to be even in a stage of grief where they don't want constant reminders. That's a valid thing for them. If that's what they want, that's a valid stage. And imagine having to, have one of these cases that just becomes notorious, and, it's tough because it's everywhere.
Well, that's something that you hear a lot of people say, just in the stages of grief anyway, is that a lot of times it's hard for them. Like, they can only look at pictures on their own time when they intentionally want to, but to see a picture just flash up or pop up, the anxiety that brings them. And so, no, I cannot imagine what it would be to turn on your television, look at your phone, go outside, and your child's face and name is plastered all over every newspaper and posters, and you're just trying to get through a day.
Yeah. I think of that even, with the mother of George Floyd's daughter, because she didn't ask to be the solo parent on this earth for her child. Whether or not you choose to have a relationship with a person is one thing, but from all accounts, he was a part of his daughter's life. Yeah. And so she was robbed in that same way, and she was forced into this position where she is now. And with this whole situation, I have to say, I've been trying to be very mindful not to think of or refer to this situation as the George Floyd trial.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that perpetuates this idea that he is on trial, which is the game that they have been trying to play, but he is not on trial. And I saw someone say, I'm sure he would have wanted to plead the